We begin this 2024 year in review with one final species from 2023. I had completed the 2023 overview just before Christmas, but then, out of the blue, an oriental turtle dove appeared, a species I had always wanted to film. So, on December 28th, Willem and I traveled to Snake to capture this beautiful dove from Asia on camera. Then it was really 2024. January was marked both by the Patchwork Challenge and the impending birth of my son. My wife was due in early February, so I had a little time to focus on the challenge first. The Patchwork Challenge is a competition where, within an area of up to 3 square kilometers near home, you aim to record as many species and points as possible. The year got off to a strong start when, on January 3rd, I discovered my first major rarity of the year. Among a group of common reptiles, I found an Arctic reptile, a taxon still considered a separate species in the Netherlands. Although I continued to encounter common reptiles in my patch, I didn't see the Arctic reptile again. The next day was the New Year's big day. With 108 species, we set a new personal record. A highlight was a flock of geese feeding near the car, among which was this red-breasted goose. On January 3rd, Cornelis Fokker relocated the Siberian pipit he had discovered the previous year. This species, from the far northeast, was the first recorded case for the Netherlands and had returned for a second winter in the South Holland sprout fields. I had seen the bird in 2023, but had only managed poor footage. January 10th promised to be a cold but clear day, perfect for a birding route featuring some of the rare overwintering species. My first stop was the sprout field of the Siberian pipit. After nearly 3 hours of searching, I finally found it again and had a brief chance to film it as it foraged further and further away among the sprouts. Capturing this extreme rarity on video was undoubtedly one of the highlights of the year. The next rarity of the day was a white-throated dipper. Unfortunately, it stayed far off on the dam that day. The final stop was the Homeus great grey shrike, but we couldn't locate it that day. The last notable species before my son's birth was a rough-legged buzzard overwintering in my local patch. During the night of January 28th to 29, my son was born. However, on the 27th, a gerfalcon had been photographed on Texel, a lifer for me. When the bird was spotted again late in the afternoon of January 31st in the slough there, my wife and the maternity nurse agreed I could go to Texel on February 1st with Willem and my daughter to go see it. Seeing the bird worked out, but filming it was another story. I had left the converter in the car and my daughter clearly wasn't enjoying herself, so I decided not to push it. On February 20th, I went back, this time without my daughter, but unfortunately I was a day too late. This month I made another attempt to find the Homeus great grey shrike, but dipped once again after over 6 hours of searching. On my way back, I managed to catch the Arctic reptile in Blaricum, giving me the chance to upgrade my footage of the species. March became a bit busier. First, there was the taiga bean goose, the most twitchable individual in years, and a great opportunity for me to film the species. Unfortunately, the bird was quite distant, but given how rare it has become in recent years, I was still thrilled. Meanwhile, the third moustache warbler for the Netherlands had been discovered near Wageningen. Unlike the first two records, this one occasionally showed itself reasonably well, a rare chance to film the species in the Netherlands, so in the early morning of the 8th I headed there. On the way, I spotted a barn owl perched on a pole for the Patchwork Challenge. Once I arrived in Wageningen, I quickly heard the warbler singing. It was freezing that morning, but it was worth it when the bird finally showed itself. Encouraged by this success, I made my third trip to the Amsterdam water supply dunes for the Homeus great grey shrike. After hours of searching again, I finally found it. Persistence pays off. Lastly, I checked out the ringneck duck at Kennemermeer. In hindsight, it wasn't worth the effort, as the bird remained hidden in the reeds. The very next day brought excitement when the Ross's goose, banded in America and having overwintered in Belgium, was found along with its companion in the polders near Lemmer. A confirmed wild Ross's goose from America was not something I wanted to miss, regardless of whether the CDNA might eventually reject other records due to concerns about escapes. However, I had to bring my daughter, who absolutely hates it when the car is stationary, so it was a quick spot, brief filming, and back home. Later, I made another attempt, this time my first birding adventure with my son. After many hours of searching in areas where the geese hadn't been seen before, I finally found them. Sadly, they stayed very far away and were frequently spooked by passing fighter jets. At the end of March, a summer plumage sociable lapwing was found near Wageningen. I had filmed a first calendar year bird in fall of 2023, but I had also hoped to capture one in summer plumage. I decided to wait until Tuesday the 28th, heading there after work in Arnhem. Unfortunately, the sociable lapwing had left, but an early marsh sandpiper was still present. It showed beautifully, making the small detour on my way home worthwhile. April was a month to quickly forget. I went to the Sallandse Heuvelrug to film black grouse. I heard and saw them, but filming proved impossible. I also briefly saw wryneck in the Onlanden, but it didn't cooperate for filming either. On the last day of the month, Willem and I headed to Zeeland, hoping to see a male citron wagtail, which had unfortunately already left, and to try some migrant counting at Breskens. Despite promising weather forecast, the migration was disappointing. Thankfully, May arrived quickly, and a great spotted cuckoo was found on Texel, a dream species to film. Unfortunately, the bird disappeared from sight quite quickly. Despite this, I managed to add 2 nice species to my monthly list, though I'm not overly fanatical about it. An Iceland gull was still in Den Helder, and a waxwing was on Texel. 2 days later, a potential black-headed wagtail was spotted on the dike at Ruithorn. The bird looked promising, but no call matching a black-headed wagtail was heard. It will therefore remain uncertain whether this was indeed a black-headed wagtail or just a black-headed, grey-headed wagtail. On May 7 and 11, Willem and I participated in big day events. On the 7th, at Vochtelo-Veen, we discovered a distant red-throated falcon, but unfortunately it couldn't be filmed. During the Texel big day on the 11th, the great spotted cuckoo was finally seen, but still eluded filming. It wasn't until May 20th that I managed to capture it on film. Unfortunately, it only showed briefly at a reasonable distance before retreating to a much greater range, but something is better than nothing. As a finale to the Texel big day, we also observed a stunning hunting pellet harrier. On May 23rd, after a workday at the office, I drove home via 2 rare birding stops. The first was a river warbler near Hogeveen. River warblers appear annually in the northern 3 provinces, but are rarer elsewhere. Since I started filming birds, I had already filmed one, but at the time my camera settings were incorrect. I thought I was recording in 4K, but was only using Full HD, which reduced the pixel count to a quarter. Luckily, I managed to capture decent footage of the bird this time, after some effort. I then drove to a relatively new wetland area south of the Zuidlaardermeer, where a green-winged teal had been found. Despite a few rain showers, the sun occasionally broke through, and I managed to capture my best footage of this species to date. On the last day of May, the first new species for the Netherlands in 2024 was found. Unfortunately, the location wasn't reachable from Groningen that evening, so on June 1st I set out southward with Emilio. There was some stress along the way as the bird was seen, flew off, but was eventually refound. When I arrived, the bird was thankfully still there. We had to shelter from a rain shower, but after filming the bird for a while longer, I headed back north to pick up my daughter from my mom who was babysitting. June brought the most unexpected moment of 2024. On June 20th, I was sitting at my desk at work when I suddenly heard a red-breasted flycatcher singing through an open window. While not the rarest species in the Netherlands, finding one from behind the desk is a claim few birders here can make. Unfortunately, the bird quickly moved on, and only the first twitcher managed to hear it sing. After that, it vanished, disappointing many who had rushed to the location. Fortunately, I managed to record its song, documenting the observation. The next day, I was working from home when a singing Blijfs reed warbler was found not far from my house. Last year, I had filmed one as well, but my microphone had interference causing the audio to crackle. I decided to take a longer lunch break to film the bird and then work later into the evening. Said and done. On the 25th, another surprise awaited. A sitting Cisticola turned out to be present on my local patch. The bird had reportedly been found a few days earlier by someone who preferred not to make their observations public. But fortunately, I heard the bird singing while biking to the train station for another workday at the office. This was my first chance to film the species perched, as I had only ever seen them in flight before. On the last day of the month, I spotted a blue-winged teal at Eesumerkeeg. Initially, I couldn't find the bird, only to realize it was sitting just 10 meters away, hidden behind some tufted ducks. I only noticed it when it took off. Afterwards, I only could see the bird from a distance. July was quiet. It was a waiting game for the shorebird season to kick off. And kick off it did. It all began with a collared pratincoll, a new species from my Dutch list. On July 30th, I was working at the office and had decided to take the car so I could potentially visit some birding spots on my way home. Just as I was wrapping up work, news came in about a pratincoll species in the new Driemanspolder. Regardless of which of the three pratincoll species it turned out to be, it would be new for my filming list. While en route, the report was updated to identify it as a black-winged pratincoll, but this later turned out to be incorrect. Just as I was stopping at the supermarket to buy popsicles for everybody due to the heat, the message came through that it was a collared pratincoll after all. This species was on top of the list of species most other birders had already seen in the Netherlands. I also saw a beautifully hunting whiskered tern in the same area, which saved me the effort of visiting the breeding birds at Zuid-Laudermeer. By this point, I had given up on the patchwork challenge and wasn't even chasing birds on my local patch anymore. The reason for quitting the challenge was that I had grown tired of the same route and only occasionally encountering a new species, which would often be something fairly common nationwide, like a greenshank. Patch birding clearly isn't for me. As I mentioned earlier, the shorebird season had truly begun, as the next day brought another highlight. Every Wednesday, I have a daddy day and stay home with my two little ones. A report of a red-wattled lapwing in Zeeland meant I had to arrange some things quickly. My in-laws were willing to babysit, but this meant I wouldn't be able to leave for another 40 minutes. On the plus side, it gave me the chance to coordinate carpooling with other birders from Groningen. Within 5 minutes, André Sikkema, Liewe van Wely and Daniel Boer had signed up. We decided to take Daniel's car, and a good 4 hours later, we joined the crowd for the second ever red-wattled lapwing in the Netherlands and Northwest Europe. This was not a species I expected to add to my list anytime soon. 2 new species in 24 hours. It seems it's still possible. August was mainly about capturing the aquatic warbler on film. After many fruitless attempts, I finally succeeded at Ace where, after nearly 2 hours of searching, I relocated the bird that some Zeeland birders had originally found. Those same Zeeland birders had another surprise in store. After I returned to work for the day, they scouted the high tide roost and late in the evening at the Holwerd Pier discovered the second western sandpiper ever recorded in the Netherlands. This was a rare chance to film the species in the country, so I set out early the next morning, bringing my work laptop along. I decided to get some work done in the car when the bird was no longer visible due to the high tide. As the water receded and more mudflats became exposed, the bird suddenly reappeared. Initially distant, the bird eventually flew right up to the car, feeling just a few meters away. An unforgettable moment. The shorebird streak wasn't over yet. I also added the buff-breasted sandpiper to my filming list. It took me 3 trips to Red Horn, but on my third attempt, during the middle of the day, the bird was present. It seemed to frequent the area later in the morning and leave again by late afternoon. As I've often mentioned, September is a frustrating month for me. In August, migration is in full swing, with drops teeming with warblers and flycatchers, but in September it often feels eerily quiet, and rare birds can be scarce. This year, however, was different. By September 2nd, I was already observing my 4th new species of the year. Thankfully, my wife has Mondays off and takes care of the kids, and I happened to be up early and working ahead of schedule that day. When the report came in, I could leave immediately. Willem joined me, and that afternoon we found ourselves in the blazing sun waiting for the bird to reappear during a playback session. The first session yielded only a poor glimpse, but the second was far better. We even witnessed the bird catching and consuming a damselfly. This was the 4th time I had pursued a pedophile warbler, and I had little hope of success, but this time I finally got lucky. On September 6th, I joined Willem and Merel on Texel to anticipate a strong easterly flow originating all the way from Russia. It was a bit early in the season for it to pay off significantly, but with 2 self-found red-footed falcons and a fallout of migrating songbirds, it turned out to be a very successful day. I managed to film only one of the falcons, but it was enough for documentation. Fortunately, they were later relocated, and I was able to get additional footage. Later, a confining wryneck was found at Noordpoorterzuil. On a sunny evening, I decided to go and film it. The bird did not disappoint, allowing close views and fantastic opportunities for photography and videography. The bird was so tame that it approached me as I lay on the ground, even allowing me to capture footage using my action camera. The day after filming the wryneck, I returned to the office, but wrapped up the day by capturing my best footage yet of a pectoral sandpiper. On October 4th, I visited Maasvlakte to record a YouTube video about 5 reasons why people rarely find rare birds. During the filming, I rediscovered a red-breasted flycatcher that hadn't been reported for days, added Siberian chiffchaff to my film list, and spotted 3 yellow-browed warblers on the Westplaat. The video never made it to YouTube because October brought unexpected priorities, like the dark-sided flycatcher, my 5th new bird for the Netherlands this year. I owe seeing the bird on Saturday largely to my wife and mother, who arranged childcare so I could chase the bird until late that evening. Unfortunately, I couldn't film it that day. The next day, the bird seemed to have disappeared, and we planned a family walk in the Amsterdam water supply dunes, hoping to see the rustic bunting. However, just as we left, the dark-sided flycatcher was rediscovered. We rerouted and I managed to film it, even giving my wife a good look at the bird. The rustic bunting didn't evade us for long. Willem and I returned to the Amsterdam water supply dunes the following day. The twitch wasn't dramatic, the bird was right there when we arrived, so I could start filming immediately. However, the rest of the day was less fruitful. We missed the brown shrike at Kamperduin and the black-winged kite at Wieringen. Next came the Dutch burning weekend on Texel. Friday brought some long-staying rarities, like an adult rosy starling in Den Burg. Initially, we couldn't find it, but after rounding a corner, we found a group of birders watching the bird. Later that day, we saw an American golden plover, distant but clear under good light. After dipping the species early in the year in ferret and pearsons, it was great to finally see one. The day ended beautifully, with the sun setting behind me as I filmed a winter-plumaged long-billed dowitcher. While I had filmed the species before, that was a summer plumage individual, so this added a fresh perspective to my footage. Saturday added more rarities to our weekend list, though I couldn't capture footage of Richard's pipit, roughleg buzzard, or the yellow-browed warblers. However, the barred warbler cooperated surprisingly well, and given its elusive nature, I was thrilled. On Sunday, we wrapped up the weekend with an adult dotterel, bringing a total to 123 species for the weekend, a record for us. On October 25th, Willem and I visited Schiermonnikoog, where the highlight was my second live pipit ever. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to film it. At the end of the month, we ventured to the Vochtelo to see a black-winged kite. Part of the motivation was the bird itself, but I also wanted to test my new camera. After saving up for a long time, I finally invested in a camera that allows for quicker handheld filming, especially useful for capturing birds in flight. Experiences like the roughleg buzzard on Texel and the blijfspipit on Schiermonnikoog convinced me to take the plunge. In early November, I took my new camera to the Eemshaven to film a Pallas's leaf warbler. Though the bird skulked in a dense hedge, the improved quality and higher frame rates of my camera allowed me to create a decent video from brief glimpses. Looking ahead, I'm planning a yearless challenge in 2025 on this channel. My goal is to document at least 250 different bird species. I hope you'll join me on this exciting journey.